Space bugs, space marines, and wolves from outer space? This is a Warhammer 40k battle report. Hi, I'm Jubilee Titan of Joy, and if you like these longer form videos, there's a playlist right down here. So my local Warhammer club was holding an RTT this last weekend. Normally it's a pretty small, pretty chill event, and this one was still small, but it was really competitive this time. And the reason it was so competitive this time is that the nearby larger city is holding a Warhammer Grand Tournament this upcoming weekend. So everyone's gonna just bring their best list and try to really fine-tune and get their reps in with a highly competitive list getting ready for this much bigger event. 3 games, 3 hours each, 3 opponents, let's get into it. First up was Alan and his Tyranids. Alan's army of the Tyranids was playing the Crusher Stampede Detachment. It leans more towards the big bugs. It hit a decent amount of smaller troops too, but it wasn't just like the mass of bodies that you normally see in some, I guess, or maybe expect to see in Tyranid lists. This one was pretty scary, but I don't know Tyranids very well. The codex went behind a paywall before I was able to look at it very much. And honestly, I only think I've played them once before this. Now the main clan about town is the Norn Emissary here. This is a pretty standard big monster, but they have a special ability where they get to choose one objective that when they sit on it, they are OC 15. Most things are like OC 1, 2, maybe 3 if they're feeling spicy, so that's a lot. Means you just can't overwhelm it with bodies, even if they could survive against a huge monster like this, but you have to really get in there and do some work. I feel like this is the only game in like the last 7 or 8 where I actually didn't go first. So Alan goes first, he moves all his stuff up the board, but I've deployed pretty cagey, so there's really not a lot for him to do other than just take these points. I start moving in and I have some really good fights. My superstar of the entire game, and in fact my superstar of the entire tournament, was the Palatine and a group of novitiates. They charge onto the point and manage to wipe out a smaller group of, I think, Gene Stealers that were on here, and then the Palatine goes into this big boy. This is a winged Hive Tyrant, and as you can see, he's much bigger than the now named Sister Beatrice. But she didn't have any backup. All of the other sisters under here had gone into destroying the Gene Stealers, and so it was just up to her. And I'm honestly not expecting much. I'm expecting to do some significant damage because it's got quite a few attacks, and every time I score a wound, it does additional mortal wounds. She goes in, she makes all of her hits, she scores 3 wounds, which do 3 extra mortal wounds on top of that, and then he goes to save and he fails all 3 of them. And this little 50-point model with a 25-point enhancement on her does 3 wounds for 3 damage each on top of 3 mortal wounds, and that's 12 damage, and this guy has 11 wounds. The look of bafflement on my face was only overwhelmed by the joy on his face when he's like, "She took down the winged Hive Tyrant all by herself." It was amazing. Now this was the mission where the goal was to destroy units, and then you got extra points for destroying more than your opponent and hold more. And we kind of just kept taking points back from each other. And I'd gone into this tournament going like, look, I know it's going to be really competitive. I just kind of want to get my reps in to practice this army because this is the set list that I had already submitted for the big tournament next weekend. So I'm working really hard to score all my secondaries, but I'm not stressed about it. But then I ended up winning. He got 71 points and I got a perfect game of 100, which because it was very competitive, everyone else who was playing against other opponents managed to get a little lower, so I was sitting in first place. It wasn't going to last, I'm not bragging or anything, but I suddenly realized I had a more serious tournament ahead of me than I thought I was going to. And guess who stopped taking pictures because the games got a little bit more serious than I thought. Now, my second game was rough because this was against the person who would go on to win the tournament, like win it all. He was playing Space Marines, and it was a really interesting list where most of the units don't start on the board. And I had to go first, so I had to expose a whole bunch of stuff. The mission was Sites of Power, and that's where you get points for holding a No Man's Land objective, and you get bonus points if there's a character on them also. And so we moved a big group of, I think, intercessors, something, Gravis Armor, I don't know Space Marines very well. And this unit had 2 characters on it, so I kind of overcommitted on one side to take out that unit, and I did manage to wipe it out. But then he dropped like a 10 brick of Terminators on top of me, and had all my vehicles got taken out by some long-range anti-vehicle fire. And because a lot of his stuff was like significantly tougher, I had like nothing that wasn't anti-vehicle was really able to wound on much better than like a 5 or a 6. So I really struggled to do much work. It's a pretty stunning defeat of 81 him, 35 me. Look, I don't know how Sisters of Battle are supposed to move a 10 brick of Terminators off of a point, but, if you find out, tell me. A really serious opponent, but still a really fun game. Like, I haven't played Space Marines very much, so it's really good to get, like, experience against them. And so now I think, okay, now here it is. I've lost the one game. It's going to continue to be a chiller match. I can relax and have fun with my last game, right? Wrong! The last two tournaments, I faced this one particular guy in the final, and if I had beaten him, I would have actually won the whole thing. And then, in the previous tournament, I faced him again in round 1. He plays a super fast, high-pressure Space Wolves cavalry unit. It's devastating. It's inescapable. He's a fantastic, delightful opponent, but it's an impossible list for me to go into. I mean, I went back-to-back against it, and I did maybe like 10 points better. But he's running a slightly different list here. It's still most of his Space Wolf stuff, but it's real standard tank-heavy Space Marines list. It's like 6 tanks and 2 dreadnoughts and not a whole lot else, honestly. And at this point, I'm learning my list pretty well, so I've got some real standard opening moves that throw away some garbage units that will get destroyed, but they can score me some primaries right in the beginning. And so we're going. I'm not going to be able to take out most of his stuff, which is where honestly, I think I get bogged down a lot of the times, is focusing on destroying units, not scoring points. But we're playing, we're having a good time. We're getting close to the end. I think they called 15 or 20 minutes. When he goes, okay, that's the game. And I go, what are you talking about? We still have one more round. And I should explain, there's an app that you both keep track of each other's score on, and then you that way you can keep track of everything you've done and reconcile at the end in case there's any mistakes. But somehow his app had skipped round 4 and he was scoring them in round 5, so he started to go back, and then when we added it up, the points weren't the same. And then our app stopped working, and so we reset them, and like everything just kept deleting itself, and we were like, what is going on? And it kind of doesn't matter, right? We both have 1 win and 1 loss. Neither of us is going to win the whole tournament, but we're just like, well, we want to see what happened, because it felt a lot closer, and it ended up being close. So we sit down and by hand are like, going back over, like, what missions did we draw? What did we succeed? How many points did we get? And then he finishes the math and he looks across at me and he goes, I got 80 points and you got 80 points. A draw! I've never gotten a draw before in my life. So we both ended up going 1, 1, and 1. A perfectly weird record. And I count it as a slight win because I've only ever lost to him. But I had a lot of fun. I'm really getting this list down to the point where I don't have to look up every single weapon. I've kind of got it memorized for the most part. And I won Best Painted Army. And like I said earlier, my opponent in round 2 ended up being the person who won the whole tournament. It's a lot of fun. I'm pretty scared for the tournament next week. It's a big-ish event. There's something like 115 players gonna be there. And if you happen to be at Storm of Silence and you see me there, come and say hi. I'm not scary, I'm not cool, I'm at a Warhammer tournament. We have a lot in common. Thank you to my 3 opponents and to my local club for hosting a great tournament. And I'll see you next weekend at Storm of Silence. Statistically, it's actually probably not you, you get the idea. Thanks for watching.